Good afternoon / morning / evening / all the time. Welcome to the internet where time is all the same. You're listening to Recruiting EQ, episode number 70, Marketing, Branding, Evolution, with guest Janine Owen. Janine, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And Jenny Finch.
And me, thank you for having me. And I'm delighted that Janine is here.
In fact, Jenny, it was you who invited Janine to the show, and I'm very glad that you did. Yeah, well, there you go. So this is going to be, I love this topic personally because I feel like it's sort of the topic of the moment and of the future in terms of, we who are in staffing and recruiting, but kind of in general for the job market. I think there's a lot of questions around here. So I think super useful for all of our listeners. Before we go around the room with fuller introductions, though, I just want to say that if you are listening to this live on either Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or X, feel free to comment if you have any questions for Jenny or Janine or me, for that matter, but particularly Janine. If you have any questions or comments or anecdotes, please do share them. We usually get a lot of participation on a lot of these episodes, and it's lovely. Just know that we are not on that platform with you, so we cannot necessarily answer sidebar comments. We're also going to we're going to refrain from naming you on the air unless you specifically want us to, just in the interest of privacy. You're probably supposed to be working right now, so we don't want to get you in trouble, especially if you're in my time zone. So there you go. Disclaimer over. Okay, let's go around the room with some introductions. Janine, would you like to just go first?
Shall I go first? So hi, I'm Janine Owen. I run JO & Co., which is a marketing consultancy that helps recruitment businesses sort of connect the dots, if you like, between brand, marketing strategy and commercial impact. I have been in recruitment marketing forever. Had a stunning realization at an event a few weeks ago that I was probably the oldest marketer in the room, which horrified me. So yeah, I've been doing it for 25 years. Before recruitment, marketing was really a thing. And now there's a whole community around it, which is brilliant. And it's certainly evolved in that time. And yeah, I love it. I think every day is different. Recruitment's still a world that's evolving and changing, and the marketing has to change alongside that. So still keeps me out of trouble most days.
That's a good feature. It's a good feature.
Yeah.
And not just recruiting businesses, as we were discussing earlier.
No, so recruitment marketing, but that can apply to end hirers, right? Employer brand, searching for the right candidates, to pipelining talent. All of those things apply to end hirers as much as they do recruitment agencies. So yeah, working with some of those on their brand, on their communities, and those sorts of things as well.
Awesome. Jenny?
I don't do marketing, but Janine is the expert here. What I do is I do recruitment. So I'm one of the co-founders of Raymond George Consultancy with Julie Robinson, who looks after North America, and I look after the UK. And I have had the privilege of working personally with Janine in the past, and hence being super excited to talk all things marketing and branding and the importance of it as well. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And for those of you who don't already know, I'm Rick Coluccio. I'm the SVP of Business Development for RGC North America division, and also the host of this podcast, which is on every Wednesday at noon EST. But you probably already know that because you're loyal, devoted listeners who are here all the time, and I thank you very much. There you go.
Or 5 o'clock BST.
Or 5 o'clock BST, yeah. Or 11 a.m. CT for those who are in Texas that are listening to right now. We'll cover the globe. Off memory eventually.
What is it in Sydney?
Oh no, don't.
A different time. It's a different time. Is what it is.
Yes. To those listening in the future in Sydney, tell us what's going to happen tomorrow. You heard it here first, everybody. Tomorrow will be great. Okay, well, thank you for the intros, Janine. In the interest of this topic, usually for those people who see the event posted on LinkedIn, which I think is a lot of our base because of hashtag recruitment, right? I mean, that's so they're going to see it on LinkedIn. I usually choose a screen cap from a movie, which I also can't do on Facebook because they don't let you do stuff like that because it's copyright infringement. I think it's advertising for the movie, but sure. But so I didn't use a screen cap from the movie this time around. I asked Gemini, the AI Gemini, to create an image to market this podcast.
So you did.
So we could spark the conversation. Now, of course, that image is not currently visible because people are seeing us. But I will repost it in the comments afterwards. I don't know, for anyone who was able to check it out, these images are always kind of creepy, aren't they? They're a little creepy, especially a first draft image. But what blew my mind about it is I said, this podcast is about how AI is changing the game in marketing, in recruitment marketing. And some people are reacting to it with great enthusiasm, and other people are reacting to it with a little bit of fear. So you had a gang of people around the screen that said AI, and on one side they were like, oh no. On the other side, they were all very happy. That's the image it created. But it's little things you would never think. Like, there's 3 rows of people on each side, so it's symmetrical.
Yeah.
And the back row are the ones with the lowest visible reaction. Middle row, a bit bigger reaction. Front row, biggest reaction. As though the reaction gets bigger the closer they are to the AI screen. There's things a human would not necessarily think of, right? Anyway, there you go. I thought that was a good topic starter to have a bit of a piece of totality here.
The impact of AI in marketing, well, in any of it, in recruitment, in marketing, in recruitment marketing. Changing things, isn't it? It's an interesting one. We debated it. Obviously, everybody's debating it, but I think where I come out is that whichever your role, so for the Jennies and for the you, Rick, I think if you are experienced, which we all are, and good at your job, which we all are, AI can enhance, what you do, and it can make you quicker, and it can make you more effective, it can make you better at your job. I think where that falls down is if you don't have experience and you're using it in replacement of experience.
Right.
And I think that's really true in marketing in my world. We're seeing it, aren't we? In LinkedIn content as a great example that everybody's talking about. If you're not using it well, it's obvious that you're using it, and that isn't a great sign. Now, there's an argument that I got embroiled in on LinkedIn this week that maybe some noise is better than nothing. Maybe if just the fact that somebody's posting something is better, but if it's not really you and it's not really your voice, what is it saying? And what are you trying to represent? What's your objective from posting it, and how are you going to prove whether that worked or it didn't, as opposed to other than some engagement and some likes potentially. I think that's where I come down, is it can make you an awful lot better if you're good at what you do. That opens up a whole other argument in terms of how do people join the workforce and get experienced if bots and AI are starting to replace that level of talent. That's where I sit. I think for the inexperienced and the junior, whether you're talking about devs, whether you're talking about recruiters, whether you're talking about marketers, I think it can cause more problems than it solves.
Yeah, I think it's about authenticity, isn't it? And when you're being authentic, regardless of whether you're using AI to help you be authentic in terms of your voice, what your voice is, and who your audience is. I think the challenge is that if you are just using AI to post whatever is in the news, or just kind of replicate what someone else has done, people aren't getting to know you, they're not getting to know who you are, and so your audience is a bit misaligned, isn't it? Because everyone says speak your truth, be human, all of that stuff, and that's so important, particularly on LinkedIn at the moment. You can
even more so now, right? Even more so, they'll be. We can recognize posts now. I think LinkedIn will start to, the algorithm will no doubt start to go down green posts that are clearly fully AI and no human input. You're absolutely right. I think if you're using it for ideas and then to write the post and then to generate and then not changing anything within that, where are you in that process? If it's generated the ideas of what to post, and how are you possibly unique, and how are you bringing anything to bear in that world?
No, agreed. Totally agreed.
There's a just to juxtapose a different industry. There's a scandal recently that sort of hit a lot of the music industry tabloids and rags and whatever, which was about a band who claimed that they're a band, that they're an independent band, signed to their own label. That was not. They're saying that they're real people, but I think they put out something like 6 albums worth of original quote unquote material in a couple of months. and all of their lyrics tend to have the same like reference to the same strange things. Like it's kind of a country-ish theme, but still they talk about dust a lot. Like the word dust appears so many times in almost every song. Not even dusty, but dust, like, you know, feel the dust and so on. Things that don't really fit together. So they've basically publicly been accused of just being AI and not actually being a real band. But they of course claim, no, we are a real band. We use all the tools that are out there and whatever else. But either way, it becomes the question of, if the tools can help you make music so quickly, just like if they can help you make blog posts or videos, commercials for your company, and you're just flooding that forward, like does that not hurt more than it helps to an extent? Kind of like what you were saying before, Janine, about, is it better to just have stuff out there than not at all?
Yeah, it's productivity versus authenticity, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
If you just want volume of output, you know, maybe that works, but what you're trying to achieve with it, I think, and as I say, I do think there'll be a bit of an about turn that where the human is really viewed. Like the music industry is a really good example. You know, comedy, there's the delivery element of it that I think will turn to see more human elements, because that's what we'll crave, you know, that's what will be valued. It's the same with the ideas concepts, isn't it? So I think genuinely brilliant ideas will become the premium, you know, because they're not generated by AI. They might be enhanced by, they might be delivered by, but the idea and the concept at the start being human and unique and relevant to the problem at hand, I think that will become valued.
I think one of the things that I always notice about your posts actually is that they are you, aren't they? You know, in terms of they are, you know, human. They're not always about the best next shiny thing. They're actually about real situations that, you know, that are happening in the world. And I think that's relatable, you know, and I think it's about being relatable to your audience, isn't it? And that's where I think sort of like, I'm sure you help people, but I think sometimes people miss that. It's almost like taking it a step back. Who are you talking to? Who are the people in your circle? Who are your customers? What are their pain points? What like all of that, isn't it?
And AI doesn't change that, does it? And not yet. You know, pain points will change, and AI might become a pain point in itself. But
I think it is for me. I mean, I'm going to say AI in terms of sequenced automated messages. I don't know whether that's classed as AI or not, but you know, that is just like, and when the name is wrong, you know, hi Jeremy, and you know, or perhaps you know, perhaps you've missed my email because goodness, you must have missed it because otherwise you would have responded. And that's where I think, you know, one of the things that so I personally don't use sequencing or AI messages to reach out to people. And obviously when we're headhunting and proactively going into the market for our clients, I will actually make a point of saying this is not an AI, you know, sequence message. I have personally looked at your profile because I have, you know, and how weird that 12 months ago, I wouldn't have even needed to have said that. It would have been assumed that that's what recruiters do.
And I think that's a really good point. Automation can be brilliant, but like any marketing, you've made the point. It needs to be relevant to the person at the other end. It needs to be accurate. Great marketing can be done one-to-one. It can be done one-to-many, and automation can help with that. But the marketing, the idea, the execution, the concept that needs to be relevant before you just go out and hit. You know, we've always been able to hit send on an email to too many people, right? In any database I've ever worked with in recruitment,
and then panic. How do I unsend
thousands? Do you want this job? You know, that's always been the case pre-automation really coming in, and that form of one-to-many, especially in recruitment, sadly, has been poor for a long time in lots of cases, right? So automation just exacerbates that. But you can have great marketing that's automated. You can have sequences that are absolutely brilliant. But I would hesitate to say that you could do to any more than, you know, depending on the size of your addressable market, I suppose, then more than 100 to a little bit more than that tops, because you need it to be relevant, right? You need it to be so any of those cadences that are working across more than one email, you can do one email that's relevant to more than that. But for a cadence, it needs to be planned and executed well, like any marketing.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. It's like, okay, so let's take a whole day to get down to our 100 people that are going to be the target people, and then let's take a whole second day to make all layered and multifaceted sequence of like what happens if this and then if that and so on, to keep it relevant to everybody, and then let's do it on the third day, and then let's tweak it. We'll have an A/B and we'll tweak it. It's just kind of like you could have just sent the 100 emails probably in the same amount of time, individuated also.
Probably right. But I think it's not, you can't do it again. Do it again, you've got to go again. Whereas if you get it right, it's much more scalable through automation.
Yes.
Yeah. Understood. And that's going to be a benefit for sure. What are the kinds of things, Janine, that you're or Jenny, obviously at this point, right? Like that you guys are seeing that are sort of common mistakes or misnomers or things that people maybe still think are super important but are kind of passé or like not relevant in their marketing approaches, email sequences aside? Obviously we've hit that one, but what are you seeing, Janine?
I think content is the big, it's not a misnomer and it's not a mistake, but I think it's become the view of marketing. So from a recruitment leader perspective, I hear a lot of, okay, I need to, they're just much noisier than I am, or we need to get some stuff out on LinkedIn, that sort of thing, without a real marketing strategy sitting behind it, without the, okay, who are your clients, what are your competitors, a whole sort of segmentation, targeting, research that goes behind a proper marketing strategy. And your channels would be much more than content on LinkedIn. And I think that's the biggest sort of misdirection I see is, we just want to make some noise. We just want to be on LinkedIn on our company page, which, let's be fair, has zip all reach anyway, but we just need to be making some noise. People are noticing that we're not doing enough. And you're like, who's noticing? Because
you're not doing enough. There's no one to notice.
A company page recently on your feed? Like, no, you haven't. So yes, it needs to be there from a credibility, and it's a channel for that element of further down the funnel. But at top line, that's the biggest error that I see. It's all content, and it's not really driven through a funnel anyway. It's just like, well, we'll just make lots of noise and people will come talk to us. And people aren't nurtured through a real journey in the way that I think sales is perhaps more used to, like we'll stay in touch, we'll come back to you, those sorts of things. That's probably the biggest. I don't know if that answers your question, Rick, but for me, that's the biggest error that I see marketers making in recruitment.
I think, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this, because I think sometimes as recruiters, we think just posting our jobs will generate the right traffic to our site, because someone will see a job, they'll apply, and we need to show that we've got lots of jobs on, and that's great. And if we do have lots of jobs, that's amazing. But I think it's moved, hasn't it, to more about thought leadership, being the expert in the field, being an inch wide, mile deep, and actually demonstrating over, you'd like to hope that people have jobs that they're working on. That's what you'd like to hope, wouldn't you? But it kind of takes more than that. And I think sometimes people just feel that they are posting on LinkedIn or on their company page, and it's just jobs. One of the things that I do when I talk to a new client, I will always look at what they're posting on. I become the candidate almost, like, so I've got a new briefing or intake call. I'll imagine that I'm a candidate applying for that job. What do I see? What am I feeling? How do I come out of that journey? What's their perception in the market? Was the last time they posted on their company page on LinkedIn 6 months ago? What was that post? Is it all jobs? What are the individuals posting? What does their website say? When they've got a link to blogs, are they 3 years old? Are they current? So I kind of do, and it's just about where do they sit in the market, and what's someone going to see and feel, and are they going to be interested? And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I think sometimes any business can forget that that's what a candidate's doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sure.
So both, your candidates and your clients, they're both doing their research, right? It's between 50 and 20 touch points now before someone will actually engage with you on a sale. Like that, think that through. What are your 15 to 20 touch points? And trust me, it won't be 15 LinkedIn posts. No. So it won't, and it definitely won't be 15 jobs advertised.
Will it not?
No.
It's not.
What's your feeling about sort of people just posting jobs? I mean, what's your...
I think it's been a problem forever. I think LinkedIn is exacerbated it maybe, but I think back when I started, because I am 155 years old.
Oh God.
It was newspapers, right? So we advertised in newspapers, and even then, like I remember talking about, like, don't just chuck it in the local newspaper and expect people to come and apply and expect people to find it. You've got to open more doors than that. And then we went to job boards, and let's absolutely throw money at job boards and post all our jobs on there. And you're right, Jenny, there was a view that clients will look on there as well. Like we have to have a presence because we have to be seen to be advertising those jobs. And then social media is that next evolution of, we need to be advertising our jobs. You're totally right. That value creation bit, I think, is where, and whether that's through a face-to-face meeting, a service review, a thought leadership report, God forbid, a salary survey. Let's not go there. I've been berated for that recently. But, that anybody that knows me will be laughing at that because I hate salary surveys. But, I think value creation is where it's at. And that goes back to the same point we just made around customer pain points. How can I help you? How can I, that's where we've got into some of the psychometric testing with candidates, right? How can this person onboard and bed in really well? What training might they need? How can I help that client figure that through and work that through as a process? And similarly for the candidate, what feedback do they need to be able to go to the next interview better? It's all adding value, and the best recruiters do that really well without thinking about it.
Right.
You do your service reviews, you're talking to your clients about what's out there, their reputation in the market, as you said, Jenny, all of those things, but without packaging it as value creation. And that's probably the difference. That's where sales versus marketing. Package this stuff as, this is where we add a ton of value, because clients don't know it automatically. And you'll be, I heard a stat and I'm going to get it wrong, but Paul Sharp of North Star People, he'll quote it for me. He quoted that it's less than a third of recruiters go to a service review with a client, right? That's nuts. Start with the clients you've got with your marketing. Don't constantly look for new, and build and build and build and then keep losing out the bottom. Like, that makes no sense. So it's elements like that where you are adding value naturally if you're doing them for a start, because most of the recruitment population isn't. But then with all of the things that you're going through in that and looking forward as well as back, in those sessions, all of those things, face-to-face meetings, you're adding value. You're taking along stats it might be from like a LinkedIn Talent Insights, right? It might be from your recent job ads, but you're taking those stats and you're doing something with them. You're telling a story and you're helping them, you're assisting, you're adding value to them.
Well, it's market intelligence, isn't it? If you specialize in a market, whatever market that is, and doesn't have to be recruitment, you know what's going on, and that information is really valuable. And as individuals, that's something that can help our clients, isn't it? Because we know we're on the pulse with what's happening in the marketplace. I think one of the biggest sort of things that we get asked for is our commission scheme. What is our bonus and commission scheme? Is it attractive, or are our benefits attractive? Rather than sort of just assuming it is. Like, what's changed in the market? We're trying to, everyone wants to hire those top 5% of the market. What do we need to do to attract them? And are we positioning ourselves right? So I was thinking actually in your previous comment when you said about posting jobs, everyone's just going to, they're just going to come to us. The Kevin Costner film, like Field of Dreams, it's like you build it, it's like, no.
Advertise it with the other 150,000 jobs and they will definitely come.
And they'll come. They'll be found and they'll come.
No, not so much.
No.
Do you guys think, both of you, do you think that there's like that this advent of AI and people asking big questions about like what we should do as marketing and whatever, I hope anyway that it's an opportunity to move to a place where there can be more nuance to the whole thing. Like I feel like since job boards and LinkedIn, it's been very, the candidate feels, a lot of them feel like they're coming at it from a very perfunctory place, right? Like I need this base salary, I need this location, I need. I looked online, I know what the market is. I looked online, so I know what the market. I don't need you to tell me, recruiter. I've got it. I know that this is what I'm worth, this is what I want, and so on. And I feel like there's a bit of having to get them out of that to sort of say, well, there are other options we can talk about if you're open to it. You know what I mean? And like being on the other side of it in recruitment, often it's like you'll speak to 5 agencies, meet them face to face, clients, and on paper they may look similar, but they feel so different. They're a completely different feel one to the next, and it's sometimes difficult to do that in text, or you know what I mean, or even just describing it until people meet them. Is there a way in marketing to sort of bridge that gap and bring more of this humanity maybe to the table, even from the client side?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think that's what I was talking about before when I was talking about, this sort of employer brand piece and your message. Marketing's become much more about storytelling, right? And I think in recruitment, especially, that human element of that will become more and more important, because at volume, and in some of the markets, not recruitment to recruitment, but in some of the big volume markets, I think AI will be able to service a lot of some of that initial process for candidate sourcing. But I think when you start to look at your market, where it's very human driven and the people matter, the culture matters, in some of the more senior markets where, the right person can have multiple offers to choose from, you're absolutely right, Rick. It's that story of the why, what makes this role exciting? Why now? What does that look like? So getting the pitch, the tone and the messaging right, not just for the brand generally and the culture generally, but the why now bit of why you and why now. I think what, the output in terms of the candidate is, what's the mission going to be? What's my challenge? What could my impact be? And what will my rewards be? Not just in terms of numbers, but how will I feel at the end of that? And I think that punchy real world, in marketing speak, EVP, value proposition, those are the things that will start to really come through.
I wonder, I'm just sort of like thinking about, the last few years, and I wonder how many, so we obviously have situations where we speak to candidates think that they know a business, we talk about the organization, we understand what the opportunity is, but they might think, no, I'm not interested in them, because their perception is that. Pardon? Yeah, their reputation. Absolutely. And I think that so sometimes there's a disconnect with how a business presents themselves and how the reality is, in a really good way. It's like, you need to meet them. They're inspiring. They're this, they're that. Because their internal reputation and how they are is amazing. It's getting that to link to the external part as well, isn't it? So people can feel, and that it's not disconnected. And the reverse of that, you could have an amazing external proposition, but actually the reality is not the same.
And we see those.
We often say to clients, it's okay, that if you are a business that wants 100 calls a week, whatever it is, just know who you are and be appropriate. It's the challenges where people think there's something different, or like, oh, we're really different, we're doing this, we're doing that. But then when someone joins, the reality is that there's a disconnect there. So like, be clear on who you are first as an organization, and then hire people that are going to thrive, have a process in that organization, in that culture, because every culture is different, and that's okay. It's not saying one's worse or better, but it's
every person's different, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's but it's not having that disconnect between the external branding and making sure that internally
yeah, literally is it a silk purse or something like that? There's a phrase, isn't there, that represents it.
Yeah.
But I think there are a few, but I won't go into the others. But yeah, I think yeah, you're absolutely right. That consistency is important, and that, you know, the why now movement that I talked about before needs to be representative of the actual reality. You know, you can't. The worst thing in the world, and I'm in a WhatsApp group with a group of marketers, and someone's on day 2 of the job, in a new job, senior marketer, that is like, oh my God, this is awful. I'm in tears. I can't. I've done 2 12-hour days. It's not what was sold. And so, you know, on day 2 to be feeling like that, you know, that's a total mis-selling. You know, it's a total misrepresentation, and that will impact their brand long term. I saw it a lot. I worked recently in the legal sort of world, and that it's really common in there as well. You know, all singing, all dancing. The differentiators are fairly minimal, like they are in recruitment sometimes, and so they almost make it up, you know. And it's like, no, but that, you know, we're really tech centric, and then they get in and there's, you know, the tech's awful and things like that. You know, it's just, you have to be, it's, we've just talked about it from a human perspective, haven't we? But you need to be authentic. It needs to be real. There will be people that want to apply regardless. You know, I've trained job advert writing for years. And that's one of the positives of AI, incidentally. Like job advert training. But yeah, and you know, where I've got a really challenging role, or where you're looking, you know, you're working in care and trying to find the positives, it can be harder. But nonetheless, think about your audience. You know, you will find a positive or a reality. If you're a PA and the boss is pretty challenging that you're going to be a PA to, own it. You know, make it someone that wants a challenge, because there's no point you advertising it as a super positive, you know, brilliant space to be, and someone leaving within the first 12 weeks because the boss is horrendous.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels like there's you know, this maybe idealized future that I see in my head with all that we're talking about, where the whole workplace, like in general, by the way, I don't know if you can see in here, but my cat Karen is trying to claw her way through the window over there.
No, I can't.
She does this now every episode, and I mentioned it's 3 episodes in a row that I've mentioned it. So for anyone who's turned it into a drinking game, go now. So anyway, there's this like idealized future in my head where it's like, you know, we may be marching toward a much more real and authentic kind of job market and interview process from the beginning. If people suddenly feel like they have permission, if it were, to be themselves on the job market and really, you know, obviously you still need to be professional, but you know what I mean? I feel like certainly in the Canadian market, being the worst of the markets I've looked at compared to the US, but there's this sort of disconnect where it's like, oh yeah, I've just got to put my interview face on. I know what to say in an interview, and I'll just tell them whatever they need to hear because I need a job and this looks like a good job on paper, and so I'll just get the job and that's it. And they're not necessarily even thinking or hoping or trying to match something to their true self, and kind of vice versa. Like a lot of the offerings from the companies are ridiculous. It's just kind of like, come to this life-changing job for $30,000 a year or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so there's this disconnect that's just mutually accepted, that it's like, yeah, whatever, that's the inauthenticity that comes from all companies, and this is the inauthenticity that I need to project in all interviews. So there's this barrier that hopefully there's a chance for it to melt away somewhat. Obviously not totally. You can't go in there saying like, yeah, I'm only taking this job so that I can fund my own personal business and I'm gonna screw you guys over in 6 months. Like that doesn't, you know what I mean? Not in the negative sense, but at least to be who you are kind of on both ends. Is that too lofty a goal to think that that's possible? Or
I think it's idealistic, but I do think we're closer to it than we've ever been. I think actually, going back to the AI point, I think the ability for there's human capital element now, isn't there? And there's the machine capital. You know, there's going to be a world where machines can do a certain amount of the jobs. So I think the humans that are there are going to become ever more important. So yeah, I think we are closer. I still think the reality is, I don't know that we'll ever get there. I think they'll still, is that a bit negative? But I think there's always going to be a world where somebody just needs a job and will say what they need to do to get that job. Someone just needs a person to deliver, you know, and being really, you know, culture matters, right? And it probably matters in a certain business size. But if you're sat on the tills at Tesco, does the culture matter to you? I don't know. It's a genuine question.
Yeah,
do Tesco care if the culture fits you or not? I don't know. Customer care, certainly, that's presumably they assess for that and they look at that. But, I think the bigger you get, the harder that is to quantify and to review and to then represent out there in the market as well.
Yeah,
we've got a question, Rick, haven't we? I don't know if you've seen that.
I have. Yeah. I was just waiting for a lull in the convo, but sure enough, question here is: what is the most important point to focus on in order to establish brand name recognition quickly?
Yeah, quick's a hard one.
Yeah.
So brand name. So for me, brand is about, it's a bit more than your name and your logo. So, it is about some of the stuff we talked about, your purpose, what are you creating, for whom and why is that, if it is different in the space, why? Brand can be a real door opener. So if you've got an established brand versus a startup, it'll get you further down the line quicker. But I think there still comes a point where, again, the person that does the job well will overcome the brand name in the mix. So in terms of, what was the question? So what could you do? What would you prioritize quickly, almost?
Focus on what's the most important point to focus on in order to establish a brand.
Your customer. So who are your customer? Who is the customer? Figure that out. Who's the ICP? In my world, your ideal client persona, and talk to them. Are you fixing a problem in the market? Is the purpose right? Those things, and then reshape and go again. And make sure you're answering a pain point. That's the fastest way to get something that works. Talk to your customer. Most people are up for, can I have a 10-minute conversation? Yeah, of course you can. Most people are up for a coffee and a kind of pick your brains for a little bit within reason. So ask them, you're trying to provide a service, ask them if it's the right service, ask them if it's focused correctly, ask them if there's anything else that they feel is missing. Talk to your customer is where I would start.
That's great advice. And it was a good question too.
Really good question. Yeah.
Thank you for that question.
But it's not a quick process, iterate, go again. I think that I'm a massive believer, and Jenny will know this, I've done it throughout my marketing career. Try marketing, branding, they're not perfect sciences. So you have to evolve and you have to test, trial and go again. So, don't feel negative if initially it's not a perfect fit. Just what do you need to tweak and try again is a really important exercise in any marketing, in any channels. Test them. I sort of work to an 80-20 rule with a lot of my clients. Like 80% of the stuff that we've tested it, we're measuring it, we know it's working, we know it's delivering. Then 20% of your resources, your budget, your time is spent on the new stuff, because we're constantly changing, right? AI, social media, the different things that are emerging. Leave 20% of your time, capacity, and spend, if you can, for that test, because then you might find something that works even better.
What's I'm really curious on this, and I know it's going back a little bit on marketing on LinkedIn, but there seems to be some questions about, if you are working for a business and you obviously are representing that business on LinkedIn, or that you're representing yourself and you are assigned to a business and you have views, personal views, how does that, being truly authentic, allow you to be truly authentic when you are not independent? Because people are going to look at what you say and how you say it and your views on things, and they are going to align that with the company that you work for in some ways. What's your view on that, Janine, in terms of how far outside of the parameters do you think we go? Yeah.
So I think, thinking through personal brand, you want to be thinking about, what do I do? So, what is my job, and what am I, especially on LinkedIn? Yeah, specifically now for a minute, what do I do? Because it's a professional network, right? So what do I do is important. Who do I do it for? and who am I as a person doing it? So almost the three with a fairly even split. So for me, I talk about marketing, I talk about recruitment and, and end hires, and I talk about being a working mom and being a woman. Like that, those are broadly my three, if you like. They segment further down than that. But broadly, that gives me the capacity to know what I talk about and also the restrictions about what I don't really talk about.
Right.
Out there as well. So it brings you a bit of
clarity.
a bit of clarity and some guardrails, right? I'm not going to contribute to stuff that is out there necessarily about politics, because that's not, it's not who. Now, if you are someone who is political and it's a driver of who you are individually, then that might sit in your third pillar. But I think there's always that top level is, what do I do and who am I doing it for? And that's where, if your business is doing it well and you're driving that personal brand through that, some of those, I call it an onion a lot. So your business brand being right in the middle of that, the values, the purpose, that, who are we doing and what are we doing it for in the middle as a business. And then sitting around that are your specialisms, your locations, your, the individual world that you inhabit as a business. Your consultants or your team, sit on the outside of the onion, so that it'll fall apart without the middle bit. So from a, that is important, but they're the ones touching, in a recruitment case, the candidates and clients, aren't they? They're the closest point to the candidates and clients. So they need a personal view, but you need to be able to pull through the threads of that onion. And I think in terms of really controversial, and that, this is outside LinkedIn as well, isn't it? We see football fans losing their job, and the guy at the Coldplay concert is the most famous recent example. It's not just what you post on LinkedIn that can have an impact on your role and your business. But I think so with that in mind, behaviorally, let's assume that we're not talking about anybody being really badly behaved in content or otherwise. I think you can create a sort of structure that works for you to be personal and authentic, but also to talk to your audience.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, there's sometimes I look at people's sort of like comments and think, particularly when there's frustration in terms of hiring processes or, getting feedback and stuff like that. And because social media now is accessible and you don't need to ring up a previous boss to get a reference, you can kind of see what's going on. You can take a temperature check today, can't you? Or you got that person, what do they show up? That's their Facebook, that's appropriate, that's okay, that's Instagram, their TikTok, and get that's fine because of the right place. And then on the professional network, if you're hiring someone to work in a business, it's like what is coming across and what impression am I getting of this person? And are they going to be somebody that I'm going to, that's going to meet us culturally? It's a tough one, isn't it? Because people do feel it's there, often it's like, well, it's me, I can write whatever I want to on LinkedIn. It's like,
but I think,
exactly. It's not really realistic.
It comes back to Rick's point, doesn't it, about ideal, finding the right match and the ideal person being real. I think a few years ago, I recommended a marketer to a good friend of mine running a marketing agency, and that fell apart because the marketer swore in a post on LinkedIn. And that was who she was. She was a very good marketer, but that's who she was. And my friend was like, no, that doesn't represent my brand. And do you know what? Long term, they'd have clashed anyway. So comes back to that, doesn't it? That her technical skills were brilliant, and that's why I introduced them. But culturally, there'd have been a bit of a clash. So it's, I think you come back to that point. If you're someone that's prepared to put your whole self, political views, etc., on social media, whether it's on LinkedIn or not, you have to accept to a degree that that's going to be viewed, and vice versa. If as a business, you might make a ton of redundancies, or there was a time when I know recruitment was viewed as what did you do through COVID? Did you chuck everybody? Did you make everyone redundant?
Right.
And so that reputation, I think, matters on both sides, not just from what you post out there, but what is your true identity and what were your actions?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, there's also a lot of, you remember when I started working with you, Jenny, like I had to argue to put consultants' pictures on the website,
Yes.
whereas now it is literally all out there for everyone to see, isn't it? And, I posted
You're a
about
bit of a trailblazer, I would say, Janine, weren't you? It's
Yeah.
like,
no, I was like, please let me just put people's pictures on this website. But I posted a few weeks ago, well, a couple of weeks ago, about the women's Euros and the women, winning the Euros and all of those things. And I have had some horrendous direct messages out of that. Like some people just go in, just some horribleness. And I think, do you know what? In the end of the day, I think I replied to the first couple and I was like, what am I doing? Just turn it off, block them, walk away. They're not someone I'm ever going to want to work with. They're not someone that I would ever come across with a client that I want to work with, so block it and walk away. And I think accept that those are not your people. It's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that as like everything that you've been saying too about, your personal brand even mattering, and the company brand mattering. I think that the ease with which people post extreme negativity will probably go down. I think that people there'll be an etiquette that will force people to think twice a little bit with the super negativity. Like it's one thing to talk about things you like, but it's where it gets to the really sort of negative and the outright abrasive. That's where it's like, it still shocks me today how comfortable some people are being that person online, which is like there permanently. But
I'm surprised on LinkedIn, I must admit, because some of the other social media you can hide behind a username and a persona, can't you? But whereas these are, LinkedIn, it's name, surname, business. It's a bit nuts, but
yeah. And I mean, possibly they were having a terrible day, and that's why they, you know what I mean. I don't mean
you just have to see it like that, don't you? And not my person, and walk away.
Do you think that we're getting into an age where it'll be a skill set that, let's say, hiring managers will look at to see if someone's good at showing their personality in a personal yet professional way? If they're natural at it, that'll be like oh, you know what, this person's LinkedIn is really engaging, but it's not too inflammatory, but it's blah, blah, blah. They'd be good at attracting candidates that way.
That's probably a question for Jenny more than me, but I've said for years now, if you're hiring and you're not looking at someone's LinkedIn as a recruitment business, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? If that's not part of the process, that's pretty shocking, so I find it unfathomable. But I know that it was the case, not that long ago, in places I've worked, that people weren't checking that sort of thing. And I think it's such an intrinsic part of the job, isn't it? Now that marketing is part of the sales world, like it, lump it, hate it, it doesn't matter. That it is, for the successful people, it's part of it. So I think you'd be naive to not consider it.
Yeah, like more on the junior people scope, I think, like when you're looking for raw skill, or like skill or will versus, will versus, what's that?
Skill-based hiring. It's
exactly. Versus someone who's super well established, because then obviously you'd be able to tell from their career and so on. But it sort of seems like now it's a lot around like, how long did they stay at their jobs? Did they complete university? How many dials did they make per day? What were their billings? It's just sort of like really the speeds and feeds, and that their LinkedIn exists and has a halfway decent picture is kind of enough. And then if they really care about their branding, they'll be like, you need to switch to our branding. We'll give you a script to put on it. It seems like that's still very popular and very the norm, even for smaller companies. But I certainly haven't seen people being like, show me somebody who has a really, really amazing post on LinkedIn. It's never once happened that anyone's asked me, a hiring manager, to be like, obviously, if they do, it's a plus, right? But I mean, like, I almost wonder if it'll start to become like, we need someone who is good at this. You know what I mean? And that's something we're looking for, and like a main thing to
I think they are looking. I think that I think like, if people aren't doing it now, I think like that's a reason not to. Like, I think there's very much a difference. So if you are in recruitment now and you are not regularly posting and you're looking for a new role, and as a recruiter, I will look at their profile and I'll think, okay, so how many connections do you have in your space? What are you writing about? If you haven't posted in the last few months, like, are you really an expert and a specialist in the area that you work in? Because companies do look.
Sure.
I think they do look. Now, it might be that that they're not encouraged to do that, but I think more and more people, I see recruitment obviously it's not the strategic part of marketing, but you are marketing. Lots of people go into recruitment because they've done a marketing degree or they want to go into sales and marketing. Totally. And very much every piece of correspondence, you're marketing whether or not you're speaking to a client, to a candidate, in the written format, how you articulate yourself, how you build a relationship. And sometimes relationship building comes first in the written format today. Sometimes because people will choose that route first, and you need to be engaging, and it needs to show personality as much as the conversation.
And you wouldn't, I think there's schools of thought that the people that are doing it, to your point, Rick, the companies almost maybe bypass recruitment, right? Because they can, if people are doing it well and owning the space, then they should be sought after, directly, potentially.
Ideally,
yeah. So I think that probably happens more than we realize, because it probably, we see it as recruiters that, okay, let's go find people that know what they're talking about almost. But I think, you wonder whether people are just going direct, like, this person's great, like, let's pick them up. And it almost sector agnostic. If somebody's brilliant on LinkedIn and knows their sector, I mean, ace if you need them for that sector, but also I'd argue they're clearly a good marketer, salesperson, hook them in and teach them your sector. That's the easy bit.
Yes,
for sure. And I guess I should have been specific. I was thinking more hiring managers of recruiters, like that recruiters will start to have to get them, they themselves will have to get good at better at personal branding. Because, like, yes, for sure, the candidates out there who are thought leaders are super sought after by like recruiters in the industry. But recruiting hiring managers so far, I feel it's still a lot based on, obviously their personality and their billings and so on. And if they have a presence, yes, but there's no real, I wonder if we're going to have to, if people are it's going to be part of training. Here's how you market yourself personally on social media. You know what I mean?
I think it is part of people's training though, Janine, isn't it now? I think I would say
that'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, not everybody, but I think that there, particularly if there are some core brand values in terms of what you can and you can't, part of that is like putting the framework in to say, once you join a business, this is who we are, and this is kind of, if you're culturally right, then naturally what you're marketing is aligned to that as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the training courses I run a lot of time with recruiters and recruitment consultants, is that I frame it as winning on LinkedIn rather than personal brand specifically, because it doesn't have to be what you necessarily post. I mean, that's part of it, but it's also about, what direct messages are you sending, what comments are you doing. It's about all of using LinkedIn, cleverly. Let's be fair, it's costing recruiters enough to to create momentum rather than it just being posting every day on a certain topic. But certainly, I think there's more and more and the reason also that I frame it like that rather than personal brand is, as Jenny says, I think now for the last 3, 4, maybe even more years, personal brand has been almost the buzzword of the industry. So I genuinely think if you're a recruiter and you're not framing personal brand now, barring out the new ones into the world, Rick, as you said, but I think, if you're not doing personal brand and you're 3+ years in, you're not going to start because of some training course. So it is about how do you make more money? How do you win more off LinkedIn? That's how I frame it, because I think then it becomes more tangible to them rather than they don't want to be famous for whatever reason, for what they do. So you've got to frame it differently. And I think for the newbies, just to press on that, like having brought in academies to the recruitment world and things, there's a really strong element to documenting the process. Talking about I'm new and this is what I'm learning is really authentic. It's really genuine, and I think it's really valuable.
It's not perfect. It's not suggesting that you're the expert in the room, isn't it?
No, it's not. But it's very deliberately not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and unfortunately, there are still some organisations that do this. That they, when they don't recognise actually having someone new join the business, because they look at things differently, is a really big positive. Whereas sometimes they get asked to change their dates and suggest that they've been longer in that organisation.
Really?
Oh, and what
wow.
that means is, and you only know about it. Almost like when someone wants to leave, because you're like, oh, well, you've got 3 years. No, I've actually got a year and a half, because actually I was asked to do that. It's like, well, why were you asked? Well, I had to do it. It was day one. That's what I had to do.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
but it's them presenting that person to the world as being and having more knowledge than actually they do. So the expectations are higher. And it's like people don't want to talk to new people. It's like, that's not true.
It's not. Of course it's not. People accept people are learning, I think, and need to learn, or else who's going to be the managers and who's going to run the businesses long term? I think the only way I've never seen anybody ask deliberately to change their LinkedIn, but I have seen someone say to me, oh, well, I can't put junior or whatever the title was, associate, on my email signature because my manager says that clients won't accept the emails. Just absolute nonsense. Like, oh, wow, okay, what? Like, and when did you think that anybody examined the email signature before they read the email? Like,
Yeah, like, are they saying they filter out emails under a certain level of seniority?
Based on your level of experience? Like, if they read it, you've done well. If they see the email signature, take it as a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my god.
Well, as our somehow we're approaching an hour already, which is bonkers because it's flown by. But Janine, how are you feeling about sort of the future of all this stuff? Are there bright, positive, shiny places that you think this is all exciting things that you see on the horizon that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think it is positive, not just because I'm a glass half full person, but I think there's huge opportunity. I think, as I said before, like, take out maybe the big volume stuff. I think the future of recruitment is human first, much more authentic. And I think, I think it's powered by this engine that makes good recruiters better and makes them more efficient and loses some of the stuff that, let's be fair, they've always hated. So I genuinely see a positive future for people who want to make impacts, and recruitment is one of those jobs, and people who want to help people find jobs, find the right person for their business, and people who want to be telling that story.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Janine. And also, you have a podcast coming out shortly, do you not?
I do, yes, shortly. What's
exciting?
Can you tell us a little bit about it? A sneak preview of what
sneak preview. So we're calling it "What's the Point?" and it's 3 marketers. We're all we've all been in this recruitment and talent space for 20 years plus. So we've finally put our collective brains together to hopefully help, to do some ranting, let's be fair, and to do some, to host some guests who've got some brilliant minds in the space, some brilliant insights in the space, and just to debate marketing, recruitment leaders, how do we improve the whole shebang and bring it all up?
Well, good. I'm glad, because the whole shebang.
September. So our first one will release that first week in September.
Awesome.
Exciting.
Very exciting. September is somehow right around the corner.
I know, don't. It's already.
And the schools go back in September. Woohoo!
Well, thank you very much for being on the show today, Janine and Jenny. Of course, as always, lovely conversation. If you are listening to this live, thank you for doing so. If you're going to listen to it after the fact, you can listen to it wherever you find your podcasts. In fact, if you find a podcast outlet and you cannot find this podcast, do tell me and message me, because I will fix that. Thanks very much, and hope to see you next Wednesday.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks, Janine. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Bye.